Chuck Norris never shouted. He never got into fights that were not worth his time. For a time, he carried himself with quiet strength. He was a warrior who thought that real power comes from being in control. Some people wanted to be in the news all the time. Chuck Norris chose to be disciplined instead. Some people wanted everyone to respect them. Chuck Norris earned people's respect. After being quiet for a time, Chuck Norris finally spoke up, and it was not about being famous or about politics. He talked about being betrayed. When Chuck Norris broke his silence, you could tell he was not angry. It was disappointment. Chuck was born on March 10, 1940 in Ryan, Oklahoma. He was a kid, and his family was very poor. Chuck Norris was not sure of himself when he was growing up. His father was a veteran of World War II. He had a big problem with drinking too much. After his parents got divorced, his mother had to take care of Chuck Norris and his two brothers by herself. Chuck Norris did not do well in school. He was not good at sports either. He did not think he would do well in life. Then something big happened to Chuck Norris in 1958. That is when Chuck Norris joined the U.S. Air Force. Chuck Norris was sent to South Korea. That is when everything started to change for him. He found something cool there. It was called Tang Soo Do. Tang Soo Do is an art. It helped him with his body and his mind. He was able to control his body and his mind when he did Tang Soo Do. When Chuck came back to the United States, he spent all his time doing arts. He started karate schools. Trained every single day. Chuck also taught his students to be disciplined, not to learn the moves. Some of his students were people like Steve McQueen and Bob Barker. They really looked up to Chuck because he was a strong leader. By the end of the 1960s, Chuck was winning tournaments all over America. The way he moved was so calm and precise it made him stand out. Then Chuck got a break when Bruce Lee put him in the movie Way of the Dragon. Chuck became a star around the world in just one night. Even with all the fame, Chuck stayed the same person. He was still the martial arts man he had always been, and martial arts was still a big part of his life. He always stayed grounded, did not let things go to his head. He avoided doing much of anything and lived by a simple rule. The rule was that people have to earn respect from others. It is not something that people can just demand from someone. Respect is earned, it's never demanded. That is what he believed in, and that is how he lived his life. As Hollywood changed over time, that old way of doing things started to cause problems. With a group of people who were driven by their own self-importance and a desire to put on a big show. Chuck did not say anything for a time, even when younger stars made fun of him or disagreed with him. After a while, he decided to talk about the 4 men who did something that he thought was really wrong. These were not fights because someone was really angry. Because Chuck felt that these men did not respect him or the way things used to be done. Chuck felt that these 4 men, the ones who crossed him, had lost his respect. Number 1, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Jean-Claude Van Damme was not always the muscles from Brussels. Before that, he was a guy with big dreams in Los Angeles. He had to do all sorts of jobs to make ends meet. One of the jobs he had was working as a bouncer at a bar owned by Chuck Norris in Redondo Beach. At the beginning, Jean-Claude Van Damme and Chuck Norris were friends. Chuck Norris thought Jean-Claude Van Damme had what it takes to make it. Jean-Claude Van Damme really looked up to Chuck Norris because he was good at arts and he was also successful in Hollywood. Jean-Claude Van Damme wanted to be like Chuck Norris, who was able to do both arts and act in movies. Van Damme became really famous. His style changed a lot. He started to act flashy and arrogant, which is the opposite of how Chuck Norris did things. Chuck Norris was very disciplined. One time Van Damme was at a party in Hollywood. He jokingly asked Chuck Norris to fight him for real. This was in front of a lot of people. Chuck Norris said no to the fight. He did it in a very calm way. He told Van Damme that he does not fight just to entertain people. After that, Van Damme and Chuck Norris were not friends anymore. A time later, Chuck Norris talked about Van Damme and said that he is a talented guy, but he lacks discipline. For Chuck Norris, saying that someone is undisciplined is a bad thing to say about them. Van Damme being undisciplined was a problem in Chuck Norris' eyes. Number 2, Steven Seagal. Steven Seagal and Chuck Norris did not get along. The problem between Steven Seagal and Chuck Norris was very bad. When Steven Seagal became very famous in the 1980s, he started saying things that were not nice. He would make fun of people who did martial arts. Steven Seagal would even say things about Bruce Lee. He thought people like Chuck Norris were actors who fought in movies. This really upset Chuck Norris because he thought of Bruce Lee as a friend. Chuck Norris loved Bruce Lee like a brother. So when Steven Seagal said things about Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris was very hurt. Chuck never said anything in public. The martial arts community sure did. A lot of martial artists called out Seagal to prove what he was saying. He never did that. After that, Chuck did not want to be around Seagal all. He would not do events or work on projects with him. Years later, someone asked Chuck about this. He just said that martial arts are not important if you do not have respect. It was a thing to say, but it really hurt Seagal. Chuck just thought that martial arts mean nothing without respect for arts. Number 3. Jim Carrey. Some people get hurt from fighting. Others get hurt from being made fun of. Like when Jim Carrey made fun of Chuck Norris on stage. He was making jokes about Chuck Norris being very serious all the time. The people watching were laughing. Chuck Norris was not laughing. To Chuck Norris, arts are very important and should not be joked about. Chuck Norris thinks martial arts are something to be respected, not something to make people laugh at. Chuck never said anything about Jim Carrey in public. He just stopped dealing with him. He did not want to work with Jim Carrey, so he said no to projects that involved him. A time later, Chuck said something about it. He said, "I am not part of that circus," in 6 words. For Chuck, making fun of someone was not okay if it was mean. If someone crossed that line, Chuck was done with them. He would not change his mind. Chuck thought Jim Carrey crossed that line. Number 4. Bruce Lee. This loss was really hard to deal with. Before they were famous, Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris were friends. They were also competitors and equals. Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris trained together. They shared their ideas about life and martial arts. Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris dreamed of making movies that showed what real martial arts are like. The movie Way of the Dragon was supposed to be a celebration of the friendship between Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris. It actually made things a little weird between them. Bruce was really particular about everything when they were filming. This made Chuck feel like he was not really a partner, more like something Bruce could use. One time Bruce made a joke that he would win the fight they had in the movie because he was the star. Chuck laughed at the time. He never forgot what Bruce said. After the movie came out, Bruce and Chuck did not spend much time together as they used to. When Bruce died suddenly in 1973, Chuck was very upset. Looking back, all the tension between them seemed stupid. By that time, Bruce and Chuck were not really friends anymore, and they had stopped talking to each other. The story of Chuck Norris is about what happens when people like Chuck Norris meet people like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal and Jim Carrey. And Bruce Lee, the most painful chapter of all, was a reminder that even the strongest friendships can fracture under ego and pressure. Together, these 4 men marked the moments when Chuck's unbreakable code was tested. He did not explode, retaliate, or seek revenge. He simply stepped back. For Chuck Norris, that silence was not weakness, but judgment. When respect was lost, it was lost forever, and walking away became his final and most powerful statement. In the end, Chuck Norris never went after revenge. He just walked away. For Chuck Norris, being angry meant being apart from people. Jean-Claude Van Damme was like a symbol of being full of oneself. Steven Seagal did not respect the things that mattered. Jim Carrey made fun of things that were important. Bruce Lee was a friend who let his ego get in the way. There were 4 people: Chuck Norris, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal, and Bruce Lee. They taught 4 different lessons about being proud and staying quiet. Today, Chuck Norris lives quietly in Texas with his wife and children, far from Hollywood's noise. His wealth is substantial, but peace matters more to him than money or fame. He once said he does not hold grudges, he just remembers. And that may be his greatest strength and his greatest burden. For Chuck Norris, Real power was never about fighting. It was about knowing when to walk away.